I got nothing sticking out anywhere.
So what moment or event made you realize that you wanted to be in professional local government?
Well, I have been in the private sector prior to coming into the public sector, and I was doing some consulting, and one of my clients was the city of Batavia, New York. And so I had worked with them on helping develop a strategic plan and gotten to be very close to the department heads, the city manager, and an assistant city management position opened up. And I remember the city manager saying to me, "This will be, if you get into city management, it will be the most rewarding job you've ever had." And I thought, wow, I've had some rewarding jobs. I had been executive director of a nonprofit mental health counseling center, and I felt like I had just been blessed with a lot of rewarding jobs. And I did apply for the job, and I was lucky enough to become the assistant city manager. And my city manager was right. It is the most rewarding job I have ever had. So I think the diversity in work and being able to serve the community in which you live in an impactful way, that you can see results every day, is extremely rewarding.
That's a great answer. Almost made me cry. So in terms of the qualities of a manager, what do you think are the most important qualities?
I think probably the most important qualities for a city manager, well, one is certainly patience. And then I think strategic thinking, the ability to think on a global level while so many people are focused on what's in their lane. And I say that, but I also think tactical thinking is very important to success, because knowing the strategy and then being able to understand how to deploy it in a with tactical excellence is also important. Good communication skills, a servant leader. I love having a mayor so I can sit in the background and the mayor can be, on television. So can be at the forefront. I think that you have to have that sense of you're there to serve everybody. You serve the staff, you serve the elected officials, you serve your community. And if you don't like that, you probably don't want to get into city management.
Very good. What about challenges that you faced in your career?
I think probably the biggest challenge is coming into a state and being the first female city manager, and also being the first manager in my city. So having moved from a mayor council form of government to a council manager form of government for a city that's been doing the same things the same way for about since its inception, 55 years, has been a challenge, because I think even the people who want to change, it's hard for them to change, because that means everybody has to change behavior. And so that's been the biggest challenge. And I think the biggest help has been the other city managers and county managers and city administrators who have also been through that. So, and that's very important, because not everybody goes through that. They're the first one, and helping understand their story, their progress. Sam Gaston, for example, from Mountain Brook, has been wonderful. He was in that same position. Our county manager, Alex Duchok, was in that same position. So they will, one of them will call me on a Saturday morning when I had a particularly rough meeting, or they'll just shoot me an email just to encourage me, and that has been just, I'm not sure where I would be without that encouragement, and being able to especially be encouraged by people who have gone before. So it's been wonderful.
Really good. I just make sure this is sound. No big deal. We could hear you. Okay. So I know that you actually answered that question. You just said, you remember connections helped, because Sam Gaston was amazing.
Yes.
What's the career highlight so far?
I think the career highlight would be putting a team in place in Pelham that is focused on professionalism and are also change agents. It has been very difficult to find the right people to put on the team. And we're not quite there, but we have just been able to intentionally recruit a great team of professionals, and they are helping us change our culture as a city.
That makes me think of asking you about your career highlight. You have to talk a little bit about what's going on with women in government.
Sure. Cheryl Kidd, who's with the city of Birmingham, and I got to be, when I moved back to Alabama 2 years ago after being gone for 26 years in the state of New York, we talked a lot about how Alabama had changed and how Alabama was still the same after the two and a half decades that I had been gone. And the lack of participation in local government by women was evident. And so we started talking about it and said, hey, what about a women leading government chapter in this state? And so we explored it and talked to the Colorado chapter, which was very helpful. The Arkansas chapter, Arizona chapter was very helpful. So we did a lot of talking. What mistakes did you make? What would you do differently? What would you make sure you do the same way? And it was fantastic. One person said to me, just start the conversation. I promise you, people will come. So it was kind of like, well, if you build it, they will come. And here we are. We decided to plan a conference, having no idea, are 25 people going to show up? And Karen Pinkos was just graciously agreed to come and be our keynote speaker. So that made it, I felt a little pressure. ICMA send in the president. We want to make this has to be successful. So we had 140 women register. And I think we had about 137 of those 140 show up. And they were right. They were hungry to have a conversation. They had all kinds of great ideas about what kind of development, what kind of skill building, what kind of conversations we could be having. We've had a couple of lunch and learns since then, and we're also already actively preparing for our second conference, which is going to be in February of this year. So we're just thrilled that and also another thing is we have a group of volunteers who came together. We have a marketing committee, we have a conference committee, and it's not easy usually to get people to volunteer, but we have not had a problem, and women are just embracing the opportunity to network and to improve their own skills, also to improve the conversation that they're having in their different communities. And that includes having conversations with our male teammates and helping them feel they're a part of our success, an integral part of our success. We're an integral part of one another's success. So I think the inclusion of them in that conversation is vital.
Excellent. Very good. Teared up right there. So let's see. So many questions here. What about ICMA? What's been the most valuable aspect of your ICMA membership?
I don't know where to start talking about the most valuable aspect of my ICMA membership. My former city manager, Jason Molino in New York, who's now the county manager of Tompkins County, got me involved with ICMA right away. He said, you got to become a member of ICMA. It's a fantastic organization to learn, to network, to grow. And he was right. The workshops are fantastic. So I never walk away without learning something that I can use, something that's practical. And also, but the networking piece of it, and I know everybody says that, it is so important. So for those managers who choose not to be members of ICMA, I guess I would say, why? How do you grow and how do you challenge yourself if you're not a member of the network where this is going on, where people are growing and learning and facing the same kind of challenges you are? I think it's also good to get out of our states, because I know in Alabama is an infant state with city management. So I'm only going to learn so much in Alabama. I need to be able to get out and network with other city managers who are doing things that I know that we want to do that we're just not ready for, we haven't been ready for in the past, and so the state organizations are fantastic. I think that to expand it to ICMA is extremely important.
Great. Excellent. Last question on this group. I feel like you answered this too in a way, but what would you do to make the profession more inclusive? You kind of answered that. You're
Well,
doing it in a way.
actually, I've thought a lot about the profession and the future success of the profession, and the more that I come to ICMA and I network with people from other states, I think it's important to understand our state and its unique challenges. And I think part of that is understanding where we are in our growth continuum to professional management. So, for example, I had some opportunity to go on the hike yesterday morning and had a long talk with a young woman who's city manager in Alaska, in a city in Alaska. And I realized that probably where they are at their stage of growth in city management is very similar to where we are in our city. Now, I can go across the border to Georgia, and I'm not going to find that because Georgia is much more mature in its city management growth. So I think in the profession to help us, I would love to see if we could kind of do if there was some way we could sort of audit where is your state along this continuum of professionally managed cities and be able to network that way or sort of problem solve. What is our strategy for Alabama, because we have such a strong mayor-council form of government, and it's very much it's very much the way things have always been. And I think it's, having come from New York, it's the problems, they're alike, but the approach to the problems are very different. And that conversation, if I start talking about how to be inclusive before I've even assessed where I am in my city and in my state, it's a different strategy and it's a different tactic. So that's what I think we can do mostly for inclusivity. One of the things that we've done in Pelham is we have purposefully, and I know everybody uses that word, intentionally sought out to hire a diverse group of department heads, of leaders. And it has not been easy. And probably the biggest block for me personally was that this had been a city where the next person in line just became the department head. It didn't really matter about the qualifications. And so there's a lot of great people working in the city, but they're not necessarily ready for that next step. And so having gone outside to search for a different way of thinking, a different way of a professional manage way of thinking and way of doing business, if you will, it's been hard. It's a lot of time. If you don't have the time to invest in it, I look at it as that's my most important job, because if we don't get those people in leadership positions, in the right people in the right place, we're never going to be able to change. And I'm proud to say that Pelham has recently hired its first department head of color. So in 55 years as a city, and it's not really about his color, he was the best candidate for the job. And we hired him from Marana, Arizona by way of Alaska, and he taught me. I had to learn about the National Parks and Rec Association. I had no idea. I had to connect with the state association. I didn't know there was such a thing. So going out and learning about what's out there and expanding it beyond, our city never belonged to the State Park and Rec Association. I don't even think we knew what it was. So to get out and expand our borders and start asking questions that we're not asking and looking at data, and I do believe that people are starting to see the value in bringing that diversity, and it's diversity in thought first and foremost, to the city and how much it's helping us. Our elected officials are starting to realize it. I get great feedback from them, and our employees internally are starting to realize it. And so it's been it is baby steps. It is baby steps.
Good. Okay, so let's move on to these ICMARC questions. What is the role of the cities and towns in our communities? It's like a weird question.
You know, I think the role of the cities and towns in our communities are to make sure that within our borders we have good infrastructure and we have safe cities. And also I think there's a role into defining the culture. The culture may already be there, but to help define it and help talk about it. So, and help us grow towards our values as a community is really what I think the main role is for the cities.
So what's the biggest challenge that local governments face today?
The biggest challenge is recruitment and retention. It is the biggest challenge. We can no longer just go to the cities and the local governments around us to find our candidates. We have to go out into the private sector. And especially now in Alabama, where there are so few professionally managed cities, the recruitment pool is even more limited. But people from the public sector, or people from the private sector don't necessarily, sometimes it's a reputation that the private sector has. Sometimes it's benefits. It used to be that in government and in nonprofit, the salaries were lower, but the benefits were always better. And that's just not the case anymore. So we have to really be, again, intentional about looking at the benefits, understanding where our competition is. Because it's not just at our neighboring two cities, it's all over. And then deciding how we want to be competitive.
Well, actually, that ties into the last question for them, which is what role does retirement benefits play in local government?
Retirement benefits play a huge role in local government. And I want to give you an example of that. I want to say, especially when you're going to hire senior level people, because I've got a 25 and a 23-year-old, and when they take their job, the jobs they took that they're in now, they're not necessarily thinking about retirement benefits. But we just tried to hire a department head, a Department of Public Works and Development Services. We hired him from the private sector. He needed to have a certain level of benefits in order to be able to take that job. It was going to be a job cut. I also tried to hire a department head recently from another local government, and their retiree health care benefits were so much better than ours that he said to me, even if I wanted to come, I couldn't come. I'm within that 8-year window of retirement, so why would I do that? That would be a foolish move for me. So while it may not necessarily affect our entry-level employees, it certainly is impacting our ability to hire the people that we want to hire within the organization or outside the organization, and then within the organization to be able to keep them. So.
Very good. Okay, last question, and this is for a podcast. Okay, so never mind.
Okay.
It's too noisy in here. Is there anything else you wanted to say? I mean, did you not get to answer anything?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like it was great.
Okay.
Really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so. Thank you so
really
much.
Good at the same time. Awesome.
It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Yes, it's nice to meet you too. Thank
Let me
you.
just connect you here.
Energy too. Doing all of that and having a 25-year-old
And well, I've got a 21-year-old and a 18-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Only one of them's at home now because our